Hi, John.
Hey, Nico, hello.
John, we've had a few interesting conversations about fake news and all of this misinformation that's happening a lot now. Would you like to tell us how did you start getting interested in this, and you're working with something related to this as well?
Yeah, well, I've been working the last couple of years. I've been working in cybersecurity. I've been working for a global non-profit trying to rid the world of cybersecurity problems. But really for me, I started looking at the problem of disinformation back in about 2016, and so I just started to explore. I heard a lot of podcasts and read a lot, and then saw some stories and all sorts of things. Read up about there was a select committee going on in the House of Lords that produced an amazing report. So all sorts of things, and also some amazing films as well. I don't know if anyone's heard of The Social Dilemma, which has been out on Netflix. But not many people have seen it, but it is a really, really important film. And so it was that really sort of got me really sort of seeing how the final pieces of the jigsaw. So I now feel like I've got a reasonable view of the picture and how all the bits hang together.
Brilliant. Yeah, I saw the movie. It's really interesting and worth looking at. So what's a big problem with fake news or disinformation that you're talking about? Why is it such a big problem?
Well, I suppose it's difficult. The world is generally just sort of digital, obviously now, and I mean, maybe we could come and talk a little bit about how Christians and the role of the church, in all of this. I mean, maybe that's something for another day. And there's also there's a huge amount in there about truth and what is truth. All sorts of philosophical questions that we could have. There are also sort of like quite deep questions about what exactly is happening, and there's some people might not really sort of get the concept of sort of algorithms, and there's some quite complicated technical things, but it's good for us as Christians to start to try and understand more of this sort of stuff and what's going on, so that we can react appropriately. I think that's sort of like a bit of a background. I mean, there's a lot going on in the church. There's a guy over there. In fact, Richard Jones went over on his last sabbatical to see John Mark Comer on the west coast of the States, and he's been talking about this sort of stuff for quite a while. I've actually got to know some people down in Emmaus Road Church in Guildford, and there's a tech ethicist down there who I've been talking to for a while. And in fact, Richard has helped. I'm going to be going speaking shortly with Bishop Andrew about this sort of stuff with this guy from Emmaus. So all sorts of other things. The London Institute of Contemporary Christianity. There's lots of talk on it, but I think it's actually sort of getting more of it out into the sort of the general congregations and getting people understanding more across the church, that I think would be really helpful.
And what are the kind of the big effects of this communication? What is it producing in the world that's corrosive or negative that we need to fight back against?
So I think it's affecting us at lots of different levels. I mean, at one level, there's a really sort of personal level, which is that lots of the sort of arguments that are happening now on Facebook are really sort of pulling people apart, and it's something that I've personally experienced, and it's making me I feel like God's challenging me about how to be more of a peacemaker and how to make sure that we can reconcile when we start to fall out. But I think that the problem with a lot of what's happening on social media is it's all very much around sort of outrage, and lots of the content is there in order to sort of like move us and to get us to click quickly and to get us to like it. And so that's really the sort of model, and all of that just means that we're just getting more polarized. So at a personal level, I think relationships are getting hurt by it, and that's within families, within churches, etc. And then really sort of like more at a national level, then really there's lots of disinformation things that have been going on, and people will have seen them. I mean, there was in fact just this week Panorama did a quite a long piece around the anti-vaccination piece, but we're also aware. I'm sure many people will be aware of what lay behind the storming of Capitol Hill in Washington, and how there's a conspiracy theory called QAnon, and I mean, it's all so recent. For many people, they didn't even hear about QAnon, if at all. But and didn't hear about it, for those that have, until very recently. And just what a weird thing it is. But so many people are getting bought into this in the millions, and then enough people in the thousands are moved enough by this sort of stuff and really sort of believe this stuff enough to actually go and break down the doors of their own national governing body.
Yeah, I think it's actually really interesting, and seeing how those algorithms work, that actually they feed with what you're watching more. So you start you get a kind of idea you feel might be interesting, and then suddenly you get fed a lot of videos and that idea, and then it kind of creates the way you think. It modifies you in a way. So it's actually quite dangerous. And I'd like, maybe from your expertise, how can we kind of avoid getting into those things? How can we kind of look after our minds and our hearts, and not to get into misinformation and actually be misled ourselves?
Gosh, that's it's a hard one. I mean, it's so hard that if you watch The Social Dilemma, you actually get the people who built the stuff actually saying that they really struggle themselves, because it's so addictive to keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. The guy that developed the thing called the infinite scroll, where you literally just keep going and going and going, he himself, cannot stop. so it's really hard for anybody to do that. I mean, there is a great app out there that, in fact, my daughter Amy gave it to me only last night, called Forest, and you can basically watch a tree grow if virtually, if you actually sort of spend some time off your phone, and it's just an encouragement to try and stay off the phone. I mean, that's one thing, but broadly, I think it's that we've just got to be aware that the stuff out there is actually trying to get us outraged, and I think that it's just to stop and check ourselves. So many is the time when I've seen something and I thought, oh, that's awful, I'm just going to quickly like it, or I'm just going to quickly comment back or something. But every time you do that, you feed more into it, and so I think I just encourage us all, me included, as soon as we feel something that we've just read, that we just pause and just take a breath and just think about how we react to it, because most likely it's been deliberately written by someone to inflame us, and really for us to be peacemakers in the world as Christians. I think the thing that we could do with is some of that Galatians fruit, to be kind and gentle and patient and all of those good things.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. That's really interesting. I think it's food for thought, and for us to really dig in much deeper as well. But thanks so much for sharing. It's really interesting what you're doing.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you very much.
And now let's watch a short video from John Mark Comer, actually, who's an amazing preacher. He's done a few really good books, and see what he has to say about this.
We've been talking as a church for years about the smartphone and social media and the dangers therein to our spiritual formation. As Ronald Rolheiser put it, I quote this all the time, quote, "We are distracting ourselves into spiritual oblivion." But in recent years, it's turned a darker shade. The problem is not just distraction and addiction, as if that's not enough, but the rise of tribalism, of groupthink, of digital algorithms that create echo chambers, of conspiracy theories, of truth decay, of cancel culture, and of a torrent of anxiety and outrage. People are so scared, so mad, and so tribal that you can't even have a conversation anymore without you say one wrong word and you trigger that inner brain sorting you into the enemy category. Friendships are ending, families are splitting apart, and the church is not immune. How do we live in peace in an age of anxiety, and function and follow Jesus' call to be peacemakers in an age of outrage?